Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney save. Today we are going to be working on our first restaurant for Mount Komorebi, and this is HarryHausen's from Monsters Inc. So we went back and forth for a little while about what to start doing with this little community area of Mount Komorebi. Originally there were quite a few restaurant ideas. I do like to include maybe just one restaurant per world, as you guys probably well know. Restaurants are some of my favorite things to create for the save file. I'm not really sure why, but I enjoy the different lot type. And there's a lot of references for restaurants in various Disney movies, but one that I had not really considered, at least yet, was HarryHausen's because of the fact that it is Monsters Inc. And although I want to include Monsters Inc. in the save, it probably was something I was thinking would be included a little bit later down the line. But we knew we wanted to do a restaurant here in Mount Komorebi, and this was probably one of the better lots to be able to do so. So we went back and forth for a little while as to what we were actually going to end up putting here, including possibly doing the Lucky Cat Cafe that is from Big Hero 6. But ultimately it was decided that it might be a better choice to just do HarryHausen's because we already have one reference to Monsters Inc. in Mount Komorebi so far. I did do the Yeti's Cave along with an actual Yeti townie that will be in Mount Komorebi. And because it's already a part of this world, and because we already sort of referenced Monsters Inc. here, it almost made sense to go ahead and do something like this. Now, what was really refreshing about doing this build is the fact that it is so extremely modern. And I do not get too many opportunities to do modern types of builds in the save file, at least not yet. There are things that are going to come down the line that will definitely be super modern, and probably like entire sections that will be a little bit more technological, futuristic, modern, those types of things. But we haven't really had a good opportunity to do any yet. The furthest that I've really gotten is anything related to WALL-E, and again, there was more of like an element of futuristic there versus maybe just doing a more like aesthetically modern type of build. Now, the next complication with doing HarryHausen's is the fact that there is not a ton of great reference for it. You do get to see it in Monsters Inc. because it is the famous sushi restaurant that Mike brings his girlfriend to, and you have the entire scene where Boo is finally like exposed to the monster world, and this is the restaurant that they're in for those scenes. But there's not great reference. You get a couple of shots of the interior, you get some of Mike and his girlfriend sitting at the booth there, and then you get maybe one shot when they're leaving that shows the exterior of the building, which is really great. Sometimes you don't even get that, but it didn't show maybe like the roof. There was no detailing. There was a very simplistic nature to the way that the building was designed that is sort of intimidating for me. I don't really do well with very simplistic type of builds. I always have this need and feel to like over clutter, over detail. So sometimes having like no reference, and on top of that knowing that this is supposed to be a very simplistic style build, it's kind of intimidating in a way. However, when I was on Twitch streaming this, some people in chat had suggested that I maybe use reference from one of the Disney games that it's a mobile game. I believe it's called Disney's Magic Kingdom, and I have actually used reference from this game before. There was one other build that I was desperate to find some kind of reference for, and it was actually Other Side Nightclub, the Dr. Facilier nightclub that we did in Willow Creek. I really wanted a nightclub that was sort of themed after his character and fit well into like the aesthetic of New Orleans, and I was desperate to find like any kind of reference for anything that would really feel like his character, and I actually stumbled upon a little bit of reference from that game. So when somebody brought it back up, I was immediately excited that they potentially had some really great reference for this place in that game. And it was a bit different. The shape was a little bit different. I don't know too much about the game, but I know that you can get different buildings and different iconic locations and sort of build them and place them around. So there is a little bit more reference there as far as like what Disney would actually design an entire building to look like if it existed with more frames in mind and more detailing in mind. But HarryHausen's in the game was definitely a little bit different than the way that they had shown it in the movie. In the game, it was shaped a little bit more like a to-go carton that you might get at a restaurant of this type, and it had some similar aesthetic on the outside as far as the colors and the general shape goes, and it did show like there was this big eyeball in between two chopsticks that was sort of sitting over the top of the restaurant. And in the game version of it, it was more of like a piece of sushi that was sort of shaped like an eyeball. But nevertheless, between the two sets of references, I feel like I was able to find a good happy medium and create something that was kind of right in the middle. Another thing that I was really excited for was the fact that we had these beautiful angled glass windows on either side that you can definitely see me struggling with throughout this build. And in fact, there's going to be a large portion of it where it's kind of wonky because I have never actually done these types of windows before. So basically they are roof pieces that you can obviously use the glass cover for and make it into more of like a window. And I've seen this trick done before, but I have never actually attempted to do this myself. And that is, instead of having them be a roof, you actually make them look more like walls. So you have these beautiful angled glass windows. And that's something that's not really possible in The Sims, but I had seen other people do this trick to make it almost look like it is. And I was interested in trying it out, but I just didn't know how to do it right off the bat. So a lot of this was me doing trial and error and being stubborn and not wanting to go look up a tutorial on how we actually accomplished the full look. But towards the end of the video, you guys will be able to see a little bit better what I'm talking about. And it was cool because you do get a lot of really cool natural light coming in here. The building is shaped very particularly compared to a lot of other stuff that we have seen in the save file so far, and it has this like closed off, very individual private booth eating arrangement, but you also have a lot of window space, so it's very bright and pretty and just very aesthetically different than anything else that we have done so far. And I should mention, if you don't know, HarryHausen's is a sushi restaurant, and again, that sort of lends itself to the theme of Mount Komorebi in a way. I knew going into this that I wanted to stick with a lot of Asian-inspired things when doing this world, and I think it makes a lot of sense to have sort of like local cuisine here in the form of HarryHausen's when we have the opportunity to do so. Obviously, we're going to be doing a lot of Mulan, and I think that this is the only other Monsters Inc. build that's going to end up going here. And so a lot of it is going to be more Chinese, but this is obviously a Japanese sushi restaurant. So we do get a little bit of both in that way, which I do think is really, really cool. Normally, I will include the menu and what the waiters and waitresses will actually wear, the host and everything, towards the end of the video, but I did forget to actually record that portion because I did it on a separate stream day, so it's not really going to be included today. However, it's basically all sushi, anything that you would find at a restaurant of this type. I actually had quite a bit of help from chat getting some ideas of what you would eat at a place like this. I do not typically go to restaurants like this. My closest reference is hibachi, and I've been a few times, but they're not super huge around where I live, especially in terms of variety. I live in a state that just does not have like a ton of variety outside of like more fast food or traditional American food. So my palate as far as that stuff goes is a little bit limited, and definitely my knowledge, but with chat's help, I was able to come up with, I think, a really fun menu and some really cool outfits for all of the hosts and everything. And of course, eventually I will have this on the gallery for download a little bit ahead of the save file, so you can go ahead and download it and check all of that stuff out. Now, like I mentioned, the interior. There's going to be a large portion of the video where these windows are sort of very awkwardly placed. There is actually a debug arch from Star Wars that is really big, and I think it's like 5 or 6 tiles long, and you can see me using it to open up the window space here, but it was not going to work at the end of the day. We were having some pathing issues that were conflicting, and I really wanted the booths to be able to fit up into the glass area as much as possible. So at the end of the day, they had to be removed, and I actually had to do a trick that more makes it look like the windows are covering the area when they're actually not. You'll see it later on. It makes a lot more sense. And then we have the little bump out towards the back, which is actually the chef's station. So for HarryHausen's, the one thing that they do show is there is like an octopus monster that is actually cooking in front of a couple of guests, sort of in like a hibachi type of style. And of course, it would just be so amazing if we had stuff like that. More variety as far as like cuisine goes, and like types of cuisine and chefs and different cooking styles, especially because it can get a little repetitive to use the chef's stations in the same restaurants over and over again. We really only have the ones that came with Dine Out originally, and we have never gotten any other ones. So you end up having to use them for every single restaurant that you build, even though it's more of like a diner, traditional American style chef station compared to maybe what you would see from different types of cultures, particularly in this instance. But we do sort of have to make do with the game limitations a little bit. The other big thing that I really wanted was these booths. I wanted them platform, sort of exclusive, cut off, make it so that when you get in, you have a really private area, and we have a lot of seating arrangements in a small space. So in the movie, HarryHausen's is very exclusive, and one of the things that Mike's girlfriend is actually really excited about is the fact that Mike ended up getting reservations to this place because she mentions that it's a little bit more VIP and difficult to get into. So I think it's important to maybe keep the idea of sticking with very limited seating. There's still quite a bit of seating here, don't get me wrong, but this is nothing compared to like Tiana's Palace, for example, and even some of the diners that I've done for the save file. They're very small, but they still have a lot of room in terms of people being able to go and sit down. And this is definitely not the case. I think there is 6 booths total, and then you have one extra little seating area that I put behind an aquarium that I may or may not have to actually move because it might not function, and I have not play tested this place quite yet. But I would say altogether, medium to small sized restaurant. Very pretty though. We were able to use a lot of textures and layered things in here to get a very traditional looking aesthetic, and I think super authentic to a restaurant of this style. There were actually more references of HarryHausen's on the interior than there were the exterior. There are quite a few scenes that take place here, or sort of like a longer scene. So I was able to get like a lot of the wallpapers the same, a lot of the decorations the same. Bathrooms are always a little bit tricky for restaurants. It never really feels like a great place, especially when I have a Disney movie reference, because typically when they are creating something for Disney, they are probably not thinking too much about where bathrooms are placed, but I do need them to be a part of the save file. So when you're creating the outside of the building, I'm always kind of in the back of my head like, where is everything going to be able to fit? Because I have to keep it inside this like designated shape. And I did manage to find a place. There's actually a little bit of space on the first entryway where you walk in on either side. I did have to split the toilet and the sink into 2 separate little bump outs, which I don't think is completely inauthentic to maybe this sort of an experience. It's not something that I would traditionally see in the US, but it is something that I know could possibly be done. So I didn't think it was the worst decision, and that way you can actually go to one side and freshen up, and the other one is more of like a bathroom. So you have the sink element and the toilet like a little bit separate from one another. So that's the only like one sort of little weird thing, but the other option was to put the bathroom downstairs, and I really hated the concept of putting stairs anywhere in here just to lead you downstairs to a bathroom. It's not really the most ideal thing. And this was really one of my first opportunities to use a lot of the stuff that comes with Snowy Escape that is more Asian inspired. There's a bunch of new lanterns, there are new table styles. The booths unfortunately are from Dine Out, and we don't often get new booths added. I wish that maybe we had gotten some more sleek, modern looking ones that would fit in here a little bit better, but they pair nicely with the types of tables, and there were a lot of wall decorations and like different panelings and things that came with this pack that just completely tied this entire place together. It's one of those things where I'm really grateful that I've waited so long in The Sims 4's life to start the Disney save, because a few years ago this would not have been possible on the level that it is now. We have gotten a little bit of Asian inspiration from some other packs. City Living comes to mind, but it's not exactly the same. And like I mentioned, this is obviously supposed to be more Japanese inspired. So specifically, this pack has definitely added a lot more elements that are super helpful for a build like this and really help authenticate it in a way. The shoji style doors or panels, and again, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, I think that's how they are pronounced, are actually from Discover University. They are not real doors. They're just panels and dividers that you get with the pack. And for some weird reason, a couple of the swatches come in a style that is very similar to traditional shoji doors. So I ended up using them in here, and there's actually some space at the bottom that is not my favorite, but you don't really see it because they're sort of tucked away in the booth areas. And I did put them all the way around the booths to give this like feeling of privacy, but you still have the window element. So when you look in from the windows, you actually can't see inside of the booths, but it brings a lot of really natural light in, and you would be able to see out of the booths if you looked sort of up. And I think that that would be really pretty if this was actually real life. I would really, really enjoy that sort of an element where people can't actually see you through the window, but you can sort of get the experience of eating in front of a window and having a lot of the natural lighting and being able to experience that by having the angled glass windows that come out over the top. And of course, this place does sell a little bit of seafood as well. There are a lot of references to the octopus, which I believe is actually HarryHausen, and anything related to seafood and sushi here. So I wanted to make sure that we decorate with a little bit of sea life. I actually added the aquarium. The aquarium was not a part of the original build design, but I thought that it fit in here really well. Of course, I got to add a few things here and there. You guys know that I can't always keep it as exact and in a way minimalistic as Disney sometimes does when they're designing like a lot of their backdrops and stuff. It doesn't always have like that extra little detail that I would want for my builds and for things that are going to go into the save file. So it is as close of a replica as I could probably give you, but of course I have to throw some of my own decisions and elements in there. There was also a fountain on the floor in HarryHausen's, according to the movie. It is a little bit bigger. Again, this is one of those situations where I'm fitting a lot of stuff on a lot that probably needed just a few more tiles of space. But then again, I really didn't want it to be like this massive restaurant. It ended up being 2 stories, but I removed the top level so that you could actually just look all the way up and have some really cool views, and it didn't have to be like a double level restaurant. I've done those before. We have Tiana's Palace and Tiana's, and they are both double level, and you can eat like up on the higher decks of the restaurant. So this was more streamlined, simple, classic, and I think in line with what you would actually see for a place like this. The bar that we have facing outward away from the chef stations is the Star Wars bar, the one and only curved bar, and that was a lot more reminiscent of what they were actually preparing food on in the movie. So I wanted to go ahead and put that out in the front as something that you could sit down and just come get a little drink, but it's not actually really a part of the restaurant. It was just something that I wanted to include to give a similar idea to maybe some stuff that we had seen in the movie. And then yeah, we got the chef stations in the back, which again, I'm not a big fan of them. I wish that they came in a few more colors. I wish that we would get a couple more that are in a different style, and obviously I don't think we're going to because they are exclusive to the Dine Out pack, but I just wish when we got some of these packs that are more focused on different cultures that we would get some things in line with some of that. And there are items that come with Snowy Escape that are like new food items and things that to prepare food that are more in line with the culture, but it's not exactly the same when you're trying to do these like cross pack builds and create very specific things such as this. It's just an idea. It's something that I would love to be able to see for the Sims down the line, but for now we have to stick with the more traditional chef's stations. I was a little bit weary about some of the color choices that we have in here, but they are very much in line with what you see in the movie. Never a big fan of bright classic reds, even though it is something that you would definitely see in a place like this. So I went with it. Obviously, that's something that is a little bit more movie based, and I wanted to go with exactly what I was seeing. But another thing that was sort of interesting was that there was like this teal, marbly, bluish wallpaper all over the place that I just would not have picked on my own. And then the combination of like the bright red, the bright blue, and the darker wood tones is absolutely something that is so outside of my comfort zone, but altogether it really doesn't look half bad. Like, this is one of those places in the save that I'm actually very excited to come and try out, and I think that Sims in general are really going to be drawn to this place. It's very, very exciting. I will tell you, there is actually going to be a second restaurant in Mount Komorebi, and this is something that was not originally planned to be here, but we have an idea for the save to include something that is Mulan based, and and it's going to end up being a restaurant because it just makes more sense to do it that way. There were a couple of different options, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in future videos when that actually comes out. It should be something that you maybe see towards the end of the week here, but originally planned we were going to do one restaurant, and now we're going to have two, but they're very different from one another. This one, again, very seafood, sushi, more Japanese inspired cuisine, and the other place is going to have an extremely limited menu with more drinks in mind, if that's a hint at all for some of you. One of the last things that I really wanted to do for the build was get these booths up on a slight platform. It is a newer feature to The Sims, so it is something that I do forget to sometimes add to give that element of like not keeping everything so flat all the time. And I wanted to go ahead and like bump up each individual booth and maybe make it so that it felt, I don't know, different. It creates like a slightly different feel, I think. And then I had to go ahead and like redo every single booth because I decided last minute that that was going to be a decision of mine. Typical. Now, I'm not sure how much of the exterior footage I actually included for today's video. I really struggled with it. There are a lot of new plants that come with Snowy Escape and rocks and very specific types of landscaping that are exclusive to this world and to, again, more Japanese inspired culture. So I didn't want to mess anything up, and I even started to do some of it on stream and immediately felt really uncomfortable because I'm just not super knowledgeable in it. So I did go ahead afterwards and sort of do it on my own, and it has this very minimalistic but true to the build style to it that I'm very happy with. And you guys will see that in the screenshots at the end of the video. I do like to do a little bit more than just like plants and trees everywhere. So there is a small area around the back that has a couple of elements from some of the stuff that comes with Snowy Escape. This is obviously a very heavy Snowy Escape build, and Discover University, which is a little bit strange, and then basically Dine Out. But that's it. That's all you need. So as far as my plans for the rest of the week, again, I will be live on Twitch on Thursday to do some work on the first Mulan build of the save. I'm actually really excited to tackle another sort of restaurant. It's going to have some other elements to it that I think you guys will really enjoy. So definitely come and check that out. My Twitch is linked in my description box down below. Make sure you follow, turn on notifications so you know when I go live. I actually just changed my streaming schedule a little bit. So I now go live Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Tuesdays and Thursdays are currently the Disney save, and then Fridays are Variety Fridays. So don't miss a stream. Come hang out 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to build, chat, talk about Disney, and create characters on occasion. I'm also working on doing a twice a week upload for YouTube. I know that things have been a little bit wonky for a while now for me, but I think that if I stick with maybe 2 videos a week and try not to push it too much, we will be able to get some good progress going along. So those are my current thoughts on it. And yeah, stay tuned for the screenshots at the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post, and I will talk to you all in the next one.